Hello, everybody. My name is Taran Pickar, and this is my digital case study. I am a sister, a friend, a caregiver, a partner, a teacher, and a forever student to those around me. The identity jigsaw puzzle that makes up me is a female, white, able bodied, middle class, college educated individual that is not a kid but still not seen as an adult. When I was young, I liked to play tag, touch football, or hot lava monster on the playground at recess, or with kids in my neighborhood after school. Most of the time, the majority of my peers playing with me were male. However, I didn't realize this at the time. Simply liked running around in a competitive game. It wasn't until upper elementary that I was told by my female classmates that playing with boys was weird and boys had cooties. This was the first time I was consciously aware of gender socialization. At the time, I still wore my brother's hand-me-downs because he was the coolest big brother ever. I felt cool just wearing his clothes. My friends never mentioned that I should wear girl clothes, but when I was in middle school, I felt the need to start wearing more girl clothes. I was raised in a nice, average family home where I shared a room with my sister most of my life. I lived in a safe small town which had little to no diversity. In this little town of 4,000 residents, I was able to play in several sports and get an education that allowed me to attend a state college. Now let's meet John, the subject of my case study. John is a student attending WK Elementary School. His identities are male, white, able-bodied, and middle class. He loves to play football with his friends for every minute that he can. He plays the dominant role with his peers and friends. John would coordinate the games his friends and him were playing every day at school and was called on to choose indoor games by staff frequently. His dominant role was very evident to the staff at Key Kids. Due to this, the staff would make an example of John. If the group wasn't listening to directions, he would be the first child sanctioned by the staff. For example, if the group wasn't being quiet when asked, John would be called out for whispering to his friends even though other children were running around, yelling, and wrestling. This was a common occurrence for John to be called out of the many. When I asked a staff member about this, they said it was very likely that John was being called out because his peers looked up to him and followed his example. I was puzzled and upset about this because the staff were putting the weight of other children's misbehaviors on John's shoulders. This was not fair, and that's why I decided I wanted John to be my case study. John and I have a few similar identities, including being middle class and able-bodied. With these identities in common, John and I were raised with similar opportunities due to class, and being able-bodied, we have easy accessibility to buildings, transportation, and simply getting around. Personality-wise, we both love to be active and play competitive games with friends. However, I do not play the dominant role in these activities like John does. We vary in gender and in age. John is female, where I am male, and he is seen as a child, where I am seen as an adult in this situation. John understands many of the generalizations that the male gender has received, including the belief that males are more interested in playing competitive sports games than females, and that males wear darker clothes like black, blue, green, and red. Knowing his age, John listens to staff, knowing that they are older and in charge. Now let's relate what we have learned about John into what we have learned throughout this course. In the article Leaning In, Robin DiAngelo and Özlem Sensoy describe John's identity as rare because he is dominant in all social groups. Although he is not upper class, John still has opportunities to a higher paying job and education. All of his identities together in a jigsaw puzzle create this dominance, giving John more opportunities to be least likely to have any oppressions and the greatest likelihood of privilege. According to Peggy Ickintosh in her piece, White Privilege: Unpacking the Invisible Backpack, when talking about white race and the male sex, she stated, "The conditions I have described here work systematically over-empower certain groups. Such privilege confers dominance because of one's race and sex. This may be why John has a strong personality where he is the leader and plays a dominant role with his peers. After selecting John as my case study, I have consciously become aware of this collective dominant identity and how it can contribute to how he behaves and how others act towards him. I have seen how the staff unconsciously choose John to be the leader or to be the example to the other children, and how peers don't question what he says and just follow. From this, I have learned that my own unconscious bias may lead me to do the same things in the classroom by asking someone with the same dominant collective identities to lead the class by example when other students are just as equipped to do the same. Also, I have learned that students in my future classroom may act towards this dominant collective identity as if they are better than them. To prevent this sort of favoritism in my classroom, I will have readings and lessons that show more representations of minority social groups. My objective of these lessons is to allow my students to become more multicultural and show them that everyone is different and these differences make people unique in who they are. More about the WK Elementary School Key Kids program. When I got to the WK Elementary School, I was not shocked that the majority of the students were white, and I saw many females with matching identities of my own. However, I was excited to see that there were still a handful of diverse identities in the after-school program I was placed in. I was intrigued to see how students with different identities interacted with one another. The majority of the time, the students would interact with each other no matter what their identities were. A common separation by identity was between male and female. However, the greatest separation was with the students with disabilities. There were two male students, both having a minority race, that students did not know how to interact with or understand why these two boys were acting differently with them. This was evident on the playgrounds during indoor and outdoor activities or games and craft activities. I hope in the future that the staff at the WK Key Kids program will work harder on explaining to the students that these two males with disabilities may have a harder time understanding the rules of the game and they just simply need to have patience with them. Thank you for listening to my case study, and I hope you learned more about John.